What is going on, everybody? We are back once again with another edition of Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast. It is Thursday, December 19th. Believe it or not, we are coming up on the holidays and everything in the new year. Fresh off AEW Dynamite, kind of a pseudo go-home Dynamite, although it's a little different because, they're basically taking over New York City this weekend, if you think about it. But we will not have another one next Wednesday on Christmas. Holiday Bash. I was excited about it. It was a fun show, and so I'm gonna need a fun crew to break it down. Of course, I've got two from across the pond today, so I'm excited about that. I had two Philly guys the other day. Now I've got two from across the pond. Let's send it out there. Let me introduce them to you real quick. First, we got reviewer extraordinaire, the man, the myth, the legend himself, David Sheldon. What's going on?
'Tis the season to kill Darby. Fa la 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 la. Hello, everybody. I'm very excited to be here today to talk about AEW's Holiday Bash episode of Dynamite. For anyone, as I said previous weeks, I am not currently reviewing the Dynamite shows. The wonderful Archie Carter is doing that for the next couple of weeks. I am back from the first week of January, so my first Dynamite back will be Fight for the Fallen on January 1st, which is very, very exciting. Archie's been doing a wonderful job. Go and read Archie's excellent reviews for NXT and for currently AEW. This was a very, very fun show. I'm excited to talk about it, particularly this conversation on Ospreay and Darby, because I think I have a lot to say on both sides of the spectrum.
Absolutely. I can't wait to get into it, but I can't lie to you. You can't sing clever parodies like that while I'm taking a sip of Red Bull. I almost just had to do a wardrobe change mid-show, David. That got dangerous really quickly there. That got me so good. Speaking of getting me so good, let's talk about one of our biggest AEW fans here. Let's send this one to Scotland, host of the Soul Sessions. Maybe you've heard of him. Soul, what's going on?
No bad, son. It's a bit chilly here. There's a flu epidemic in my city, but nonetheless, I'm alive and still kicking. Maybe just less kicking at the moment. But nonetheless, it was a fun episode of AEW Dynamite. I've seen people had stupid takes. I've had people have some interesting takes, but mostly stupidity, which I'm sure we'll get into with our main event topic tonight. Nonetheless, though, I thought it was an entertaining show. I know our own Shad, Tuesday Night Delight, was in there in person, and he enjoyed it. So if, Mr. NXT enjoyed it, I think we can all enjoy it.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk about it. And I will say, it's not a super kick party, but, there's an ample amount of kicks. It's a super kick gathering, right? Speaking of still kicking, Soul. That's where I'm going with that one. It's not quite the party, less kicks, but a small gathering. Speaking of gatherings, this has nothing to do with gathering, but Mercedes Moné defends the TBS title against Anna Jay. And I will say this, yesterday, I think I was too harsh when I said it's the most predictable match of the matches advertised. I would have liked to have seen Anna Jay potentially pick up a victory. I did end up actually being correct that it was Moné to get the win. But honestly, it was a fine enough match for me. And I didn't have an issue with it. There has to be a time coming up here in the near future, though, guys. I've been thinking about this a lot with Anna Jay. She seems to be the bridesmaid, right? And not the bride far too often. She gets right there, right on the cusp of a big run or a big push. And yes, I understand she's young. Absolutely. So there's time. But let's stop waiting sometime soon, hopefully. I think it's time to really give her the push and see what she can really do on a deeper run, maybe some character evolution. I don't know exactly the formula, but Anna Jay has had staying power. We've seen her at a young age show versatility, whether it be the Dark Order comedy stuff, whether it be some more physical wrestling, all of that. She's tagged. She can wrestle in singles. She's better on the mic than I think people give her credit for. I think she's much better on the mic than people give her credit for. She's had a lot going for her. I definitely think it's time for a full-blown push. But of course, let's break down last night's match first. David, I will go to you out of the gates. What did you think of Mercedes Moné retaining the TBS title against Anna Jay? That rhymed. Whoops.
Well, I think it's interesting because if we look at Anna Jay as a sort of case study, so Anna Jay, I've never particularly been the biggest fan of, particularly in previous years. She's very young. She's got a lot of potential, but I've never seen that potential fully realized. And I think for a long time she was quite, not rough in the ring would be the wrong word to use, but she's green and she's still learning. The trip to Japan, which they go on about every week, to the Stardom Grand Prix, did her a lot of good, and she improved quite significantly through those matches, as do a lot of women when they go and work in Japan, because of the style of Japanese wrestling. And she came back, and she has looked a lot better since she's come back, and I am so happy to say that. I'm happy to see that level of improvement, and to see her start to blossom. I think that Mercedes, obviously off the back of her incredible match with Hazuki at New Japan Strong show on Sunday, was obviously, she's riding a good wave this week. And I thought this match, while it started a little bit slow, and it started a little bit basic, and it was sort of, a lot of slapping and a lot of sort of basic stuff. Once we got out of picture in picture, this built really, really nicely, and worked actually a really good match, I thought, particularly in those last few minutes. The counter out of what's the name of the move? The bank statement.
It was the bank statement, but it has a new name now. I feel terrible. I was actually racking my brain too.
Moneymaker. The Moneymaker.
Moneymaker.
There you go. I reviewed this show. How am I? I'm so bad with the names of wrestling moves. But yeah, the tip out of the bank statement into the Moneymaker, into the pin, into those sort of final few big moves. Really, really good stuff. Actually, a lot in some points cleaner than some of the spots came off cleaner than Hazuki, particularly the sort of code red powerbomb into the corner came off much sort of better than it did on Sunday. So Mercedes is having a great run. I don't think it was ever in doubt that she was going to retain here. I think the thing with Anna, I think Anna is now getting better, and I think perhaps going straight into a feud with Mariah May and then straight into a feud with Mercedes is a bit of a mistake, because I think she needs to build up some wins elsewhere on the card. We have Jamie Haters, we have, proper feuds, Queen Aminatas. We can sort of build this women's division. And obviously, in order to do that, you need to give them time outside of the title picture to have half a chance at it. But I do think that there is certainly potential to build up Anna Jay through other feuds to then build back to another match with Mercedes or another match with Mariah or whoever the champ may be at the time that is a lot more competitive, and gets her over the line finally, because I am now starting to see that potential in Anna Jay, that I think she can achieve it. I don't think it's quite there yet. But I agree with the always the bridesmaid, never the bride thing. And I do think that she should be picking up more wins. I just think we can do it in a better way around the card, perhaps taking her down to do some stuff with Athena or Billy Starks, depending on Final Battle, and do some other stuff around that to keep building her, because she is doing really, really well at the moment.
And I really appreciate that perspective, David. It's a really good point. Like, yes, two things can be true at once, right? Anna Jay, it would be awesome to see a big push to finally see her, I don't want to say get over the hump, but it always feels like she's really close to this giant breakthrough. And then it's like, ooh, they pull the reins, right? Like they pull the reins. And Mercedes Moné being the one where it's like, okay, now's the time, right? Is a little bit like the throwing the firework in the middle of the party instead of like setting up for fireworks, right? Like you don't know how it's gonna, you don't know if it's gonna miss everybody, right? If it's gonna work perfectly. It's not a great idea when it comes to moves like that. Down the road, though, there's got to be a time. She's put the time in, and she does deserve it. I think at some point, Soul, do you have an idea of how that would go? And also, can't go without getting your thoughts on the Moné victory and retaining the title as well.
So first of all, the match itself, I thought was very entertaining. I have no real major complaints with it. I think it went a decent amount of time. I think Moné and Anna Jay both showcased great amounts of wrestlings, and honestly, it was a fine championship match. The path for these two is very interesting. Obviously, Anna Jay cannot challenge for the AEW Women's World Championship because of a stipulation against Mariah May, which she ended up losing. Moné has a lot on her plate right now, obviously with Chris Statlander coming up at World's End, Mina Shirakawa at Wrestle Dynasty for the New Japan Strong, and also possibly the Rev Pro Women's Championship as well. I also seen with the Rev Pro Women's Championship, they've dropped the Maiden of Chaos belt. I believe that was also a part of that. It's a double championship, but fair dues. It's just interesting to see that. We're not really a proper explanation, but fair point indeed. See, I don't think Anna Jay is going to dethrone Moné. I think it's going to be Athena. I think Athena's going to win that cup. She's going to challenge Moné, maybe Double or Nothing or Revolution with a timing period. and fully move over to being a part of AEW programming. Obviously, if that happens, then Billie Starkz is going to be the women's champion on Ring of Honor, and she's kind of a face right now. Maybe she might surprise us and become a bigger, eviler woman by taking down Athena, allowing Athena to kind of be a face on the AEW programming. If so, I wouldn't mind her going to Ring of Honor, just simply because Monet's got a lot on her plate right now, which is a lot in the pipeline with Athena, obviously, and she can't challenge it until Mariah May loses the belt to somebody else. And I doubt Mariah May is going to lose it to another heel. So with that all said, I think maybe the Ring of Honor Women's World Championship in Anna Jay's future, or even their television championship, is the more possible outcome. Or she goes over to Stardom again and wins one of the many Stardom belts I know they have over there. She can maybe even form a faction with somebody. But I think as well, and this is a bigger thing I'm sure we'll discuss about at a later point. I don't know about the Continental Classic next year, simply because obviously Rampage is going, so you have less TV time to showcase these matches, meaning the more weekly block off the Continental Classic will have to be more focused on, obviously, the blocks. But I obviously don't like the Continental Championship. In my mind, I think it should be more of a title contendership for Revolution. Allows that to build over the winter period, or heck, maybe even have it at World's End with a double championship match. You have the match you build up for that, and then maybe have another match. And I think a women's one would be an absolute interesting opportunity just to showcase the varied amount of women wrestlers that they have talent-wise or across different pools. So a women's Continental Classic, I think, is maybe the shout for next year, but possibly not. Obviously, we know AEW's way they like to stick to what they do and what's happened before. They're very big on Tony Khan loves his respecting tradition and history and not before in it. He's not one to change across something that's, come to an existence or worked before. Right. So I don't know then, but obviously it really shows with the women's division that until the title picture, obviously across a lot of AEW's titles, changes from heels to face, we're then going to get some more fresher dynamics.
Yeah, it does, to your point, especially in regards to Anna Jay, right? It does feel like things need to sort of open up a bit, and then you can strike as far as giving Anna a push, no matter which title it is. You mentioned a lot of belts that potentially you can put on Anna Jay's shoulder. No doubt about that. But the idea of a women's Continental Classic, I don't mind in the least. My only issue with the Continental Classic is this. I don't understand why the champion now all of a sudden just has to be the same in the tournament as everybody else. Like, even if it was that you got to buy through the group stage, I think I would be more comfortable with that. Like, if you had a group stage here and you go, okay, the top performer in each, bracket, top person in blue, top person in gold, whether it's men's or women's, advances, and you make it a 4-person tournament now. So there's one wild card, which is the highest scoring second place, because then, some years you have a person who was, they just squeezed in and got second. You can tell stories with they, wrestled to a draw to earn the wild card spot and whatnot. And then in other years, you just have, an obvious person in second place. And then the current Continental champion is the 4th that's of the 4. And you have that match. You could maybe even do it in one night, the way they did the undisputed title tournament with Rock, Austin, Jericho, and Kurt Angle. That would be really fun on a pay-per-view. And I think it would bring steam to that title in a way that it hasn't had. Because you can always look forward to that. Like, listen, you're going to have to wrestle twice in a night if you're going to be Continental champion.
The thing is, though, like, unlike the International and the TNT, the Continental means nothing. Like, I'm not trying to be harsh on obviously what Okada's put into that belt, and obviously Eddie Kingston with the Continental Crown Championship as it was originally. But it feels like after the crown dissolved, it lost all real meaning behind it. Like a belt that was a part of...
That's fair. That is actually very fair.
When you have a belt that's a part of 3 identities with the companies of the Ring of Honor World Championship, the Continental Championship, and then the New Japan Strong Championship, that means something. That's an interesting fathom of how everybody at the time was booking how this crown could be defended and across the 3 programs. Obviously, one's technically the same one with AEW, but it's across different identity promotions. Yeah. Now it just feels like it. the Continental Championship to me, as an AEW fan, means less than the FTW Championship in my mind.
Whoa,
In
that,
my mind.
I didn't expect.
Yeah.
I hear where you're coming from, but that I didn't expect.
Here's my point with that. The FTW Championship had the history of Taz. It was a Renegade Championship, never sanctioned by a promotion. It has the history of ECW, his feud with Sabu. Bringing it back into AEW with the FTW Championship, it was formed as basically Taz giving his accolade to somebody he could see being a future AEW World Championship. Brian Cage, Ricky Starks, The Hook. Then his identity changed again when Jack Perry held it, and he was basically calling himself the new king of, like hardcore and being the new Renegade. Right. Hook regained it. It then had another identity with the For the World Championship by Chris Jericho, who actually brought something different with that.
For the World, I can't lie. That one made me laugh this year.
It was fun.
It was funny. It was funny. It was clever.
If you then compare the FTW Championship to the Continental Championship, if you go to me as an AEW fan and you tell me what is the Continental Championship, I can easily tell you, well, it's a championship that was formed with a tournament, and it's the champions defending the tournament. It has its own sets of rules. Obviously, 20-minute time limit draws, no interferences. After that, what else?
Here's my thing, and I think Shad actually summed this up really well in the comments. He said the title don't mean a lot, but I do love the Classic as a whole.
The Classic,
that's
great.
My thing is the Classic is starting to turn me. I think this year's tournament in execution, given the brackets, has been really, really well done. Arguably better than the inaugural one, which I didn't expect.
I disagree. I think last year's was a lot better. I say this,
but David, before you say that really quick, do you think that maybe part of that is, and I think this is the thing for me, in hindsight, the veil of confusion last year is, I think, the reason that my perception is that this year's is better. That's at least for me, right? That's just.
I think. Yeah, I still think I would care. I agree with Sol. I care a lot more if it was for a world title, because. Or for a world title shot, because the problem in the Continental Championship is we now know they're basically fighting over nothing. Right. So what it now becomes is good matches. There've been loads of good matches. Briscoe versus Fletcher on Collision this week was excellent. Loads of good matches through the tournament. But I'm not getting that level of fire that I got from, say, Kingston or from Danielson. I'm not getting
Eddie
that
Kingston
passion.
Made last year's tournament very special. That is a very good point, David. I will say this, though. I didn't expect a 20-minute opening segment. We got to keep rolling here, my friends. No worries. I'm not trying to cut you off or be that guy. We could probably talk about this one for the whole show if we really wanted to. But let's keep this one rolling. And I'm excited to talk about this one because if you know me, you know I love Tony Storm's work. It's not very often when you talk about a professional wrestler that you aren't saying, they might do really well in this other company. You're actually saying, I'm afraid we might lose them to Hollywood. Tony Storm can go when it comes to that. David, you are our resident thespian when it comes to WR. So I'm going to go to you on this one. Dude, she's sublime, is she not?
I think this is genius. I mean, I love the timeless gimmick, and I love that idea. I also love the idea that she's forgotten everything that's happened pre AEW. It's a bananas idea that crucially should not work. It should be absolutely rubbish. But the fact that she is so dedicated to the bit and so dedicated in the performance side of it to making it work makes it entertaining for us. I think, I mentioned this in the chat earlier, Broken Matt Hardy, a stupid, slightly naff gimmick that should not have worked, but by sheer force of will of the performer, it's brilliant. Same with Damien Mizdow, another great example. Something that on paper should be terrible. Rusev Day. There's loads of absolute rubbish that should die, but builds into something. I'm gonna give a theory here, and I would like to preface this by saying this is not my theory. I read this from a Facebook group called Cruising with Kayfabe. I want to give them a shout out for this because it's not my original shout idea, out. But I think it's interesting. They proposed that, much in the way that the original Mariah May and Tony Storm dynamic was baked into sort of Sunset Boulevard and into All About Eve. This might be more like Talented Mr. Ripley of this whole thing about deception and all the rest of it. There is a theory that was proposed that this is not real. and that Tony is trying to get into Mariah's head and into her circle by pretending not to remember anything, so that she's treated as a fool and can pick the right moment to strike back. That would require a lot of very careful booking. It's not this big genius plan that will write itself. You've got to write that very carefully. But that could be a fascinating way to go with this. Or she's just got amnesia. She's just forgotten everything, which is also quite funny. I think I just think there's a lot more layers to this Toni Storm character than I think we currently think there is. And off the back of what Crucible Kayfabe said, I think that there is certainly this, with these layers, I think there might be a more intricate story at play here. But in any case, the dynamic between RJ City and Toni Storm was brilliant tonight. And I was just really, really impressed by Tony's performance, by RJ's performance, and this wider character, because I think, honestly, it is really, really funny. On quite a funny show with some funny segments. MJF and Chris Jericho were both entertainingly funny this week. But this was the funniest thing on the show. Really, really good.
Stood out. And it's interesting to me, David, because I made this comparison last night, actually, watching with some buddies. And I mean it as an ultimate compliment. From a talent perspective, she's like the Philip Seymour Hoffman of wrestling. You can literally give her any, right? Like, play this. Like you said, this shouldn't work. Except for look who's playing the role, right? Yeah. Like, not to continue to make film and acting references, but right? Like, it shouldn't work. But Toni Storm's that dang good at making stuff like this work. And the idea that we don't know. Yeah. We don't know what the deal is. Does she have amnesia? Did she bonk her head? Is she delusional? Is she one step ahead of us? Is she 2 steps behind? I'm not entirely sure. Is so fascinating to me and so smart, and we need more of it in wrestling.
Yes, I think there are sort of, you can look at in the same way as you can look at acting in 2 different ways. When it comes to wrestling acting, you have 2 different types of character. I think you have the very realistic, very serious characters with the terms of the acting. I think Roman Reigns, I think Eddie Kingston, I think John Moxley, I think people like that. Then you have
Eddie and Mox aren't even hardly acting, but I do hear where you're coming from.
There is that sort of that element. Then you've got your cartoon characters. You've got Matt Hardy, you've got the Outrunners, you've got, Toni Storm is a cartoon character, but she is one of the best cartoon characters in the company. And honestly, the best thing about Toni is she does sort of blur the line a little bit in the same way that Bray Wyatt did, where he was over the top and he was a bit silly, particularly with the Firefly Funhouse character, is what I'm thinking of, where you're very big and very silly, but is there something going on behind those eyes? And that is, I think, what makes this gimmick really interesting are we taking this on face value that Toni Storm is just lost her memory, or is there that extra layer that we're not seeing? I think that's what makes it so interesting.
And I find this super fascinating too, because I want to ask you a couple questions as well. So about this subject, we can stay on this one for a couple more minutes here, just because I think about the timeline of Toni Storm's career, and we didn't see this type of work for a long time. And there's a legitimacy that she established as a wrestler. We do take her seriously as a wrestler, very seriously. And you mentioned the cartoonish side of it, the over-the-top stuff. Bray Wyatt, a great comparison there. Bray Wyatt straps up in a big match. You take it seriously. Toni Storm, same deal. And there's something special about striking that balance where you can do this extreme to some standards or over-the-top type character work. And I think part of that is because she spent the beginning of her career not doing that. Yeah. I think that's part of the reason it's so sublime is it all feels unexpected because there was an established baseline for what Toni Storm was.
Yeah. Toni has always been
gotten rid of that, right? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I was going to say, Toni's always been a really good wrestler. That's never been it. All the way back from the UK tournament, all those kind of things. She's, was it Mae Young? Was the Mae Young tournament or the UK tournament?
Mae
Young. Sorry, it was the Mae Young Classic. And then her work sort of around that, coming off the back of that. She, has always established herself as a very good wrestler and a good enough character. The thing is, in AEW, you have a lot of very good wrestlers. They may not be used, but they are very good wrestlers. What Toni needed to stand out from everybody else in that company was a clear, slightly silly, but, nuts. She needed to take a risk. And she did take that risk, and she went for it. And I said, Timeless Tony could have died. This could die. But I have so much, like, in the same way that when Bray came back with the Firefly Funhouse, and some people, not me, I was obsessed from the start, but some people went, this is so stupid and so weird. But because you know that they're really good and they've got a really good character built up with Timeless Tony or with Cult Bray, you just think this will get there, and this like, you have that faith to go with it, and that is what I think. I have the faith to go with them that this is going to be amazing and not crash and burn.
Absolutely. Okay, so, and I know I already earlier said, like, I was going to give you some time on the Tony Storm thing, but I will say we are falling behind here. I keep forgetting the time. I'm being a bad host. I want to apologize to everybody. We'll get to the next topic. I got to also make a real quick mention here about our friends over at Progress Wrestling. If you haven't checked them out, we got really good stuff coming up, especially tomorrow. Keep your eyes peeled. But also, if you're just looking for a tape library full of excellent wrestling, what are you waiting for? Use this code too. We're going to give you a discount. Watch Progress 1. You're going to get 50% off your first month on Demand Progress Plus, which is the home of Progress. They find many more promotions. Some of your absolute favorites cut their teeth in Progress. The current Progress product is off the charts. Every chapter keeps getting better and better. If you are a pro wrestling fan, which we all know you are, considering you're joining us this afternoon or evening or morning, depending on where you are, geographically speaking, this is worth it. I assure you. Use that code, Watch Progress 1. That's 50% off your first month. So check it out. You'll dig it. I assure you. Speaking of things you're going to dig, we're going to have to talk about how much Soul dug this main event last night. They couldn't coexist. Jane Adam, argument. And it backfires. The Death Riders rode, and Orange Cassidy is the victim. Soul, talk to me about it.
This whole match basically is what the Death Riders' whole motif is about. AEW is disorganized. AEW is not a place where maybe some people support one another. Their ideas is that the company is truly fractured. You've seen it within this match. Yes, Hangman Adam Page hates people and likes to burn his house houses. You know, Jay White will put a Blade Runner on anybody just to get over with him if it's not somebody who's aligned with the Bang Bang gang. And Orange Cassidy is just whatever. These are free personality types that should not mix well. I fully expect with the 4-way coming up at World's End, Moxley's going to walk out as champion. But I think after that, it goes back to what, really formed this whole group in the first place. You bleed together in the ring. That's a bond. That's what the Blackpool Combat Club was built upon. I think if we walk out of World's End, Moxley doesn't bleed, but Cassidy does, White does, and Hangman does, I think they might have a bond of blood built between them. I'm not saying they're going to join a faction or whatever, but I feel like they will then stand up and fight for the person who is able to rally them all together to defeat Moxley down the line. Some people may say, well, that's just, Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. Well, sadly, stories aren't, elitists or, one-time shows. Multiple stories can be told over the same generations, and they might just have the old starting point of somebody else. Stories are the main thing. They can be the same, but yet the characters within it are different, and they could still reach the same destination, but maybe that journey is a wee bit different. And I think with Death Riders, they are going for that kind of story. Maybe so-and-so similar to Bloodline and Cody Rhodes defeating them and the big old bad guy and saving the company and everybody's holding babies and kissing and celebrating while they're on HBO Max. But yeah, I think coexistence is the whole crust of the Death Rider storyline.
I think so too. And I really like how you broke that down, because when it comes to the Death Riders, I don't know if there was even a full initial plan, but I do think it's going to get us back to an era of AEW Dynamite that we remember fondly. And the comparisons to other storylines will fade because you can connect dots. There's a certain Ken Omega out there hanging around that could potentially insert himself into this storyline, whether he's cleaning with his world famous broom or chugging a glass of milk and passing an ice cold one over to old Hangman to snap him out of it. There's a lot of stuff we can do. There's a lot of stuff we can do to tell this story. And that's one thing I'm starting to really like and appreciate about the Death Riders. They're not giving away too much at once. It's little nugget, little nugget, little nugget, little nugget. We are going to get the big hammer at some point. I understand what happened with MJF and Adam Cole, and I had that feeling for a long time with that storyline. Things do happen. Things can change. This one has a different feel to me. It's actually starting to get better week by week. I feel like there's a level of hindsight when it comes to my opinion on it, where I look at it like, yeah, at first I was like, what's going on here? This seems like a knockoff. It seems like a vehicle for Shane McMahon. There's a lot of, right? Now it's starting to be clearer, right? Like they've changed lanes. They've gone from the middle of the freeway to the fast lane. They're in the carpool lane at this stage, and it's working. And I do think we're working to something larger here that I really do hope we appreciate. And it doesn't feel the exact same as Cody, because there is no Cody right now. You know, like there is no Cody in this story yet, but I've heard those comparisons too, so it bugs me to death. Let's move on to our main event, though. That was the main event. This is our main event of the evening. And I found this funny, to be honest. Monster shout out, Ben. Thank you. Graphics are off the charts as always. But I can't lie. When I saw this one, I was like, little bit of recency bias. But I mean, it only happened last night. But I will say, I thoroughly enjoyed this match. I mean, not only that, I'd call it an upset. Will Ospreay versus Darby Allin, and Darby Allin picked up the victory. He flies around the yard like a baseball, but either way, gets the win. I mean, he's one step closer to advancing in this Continental Classic, but remember, this is the guy that wrecked the car because he was mad at the Death Riders. So I'm a little confused by that too. But when it comes to potentially maybe match of the year, I don't know. As far as TV matches, I'm not sure. What about AEW specifically? I'm going to start with you, Soul, and then I'm going to go to you, David, because I know you've got thoughts when it comes to this. But Soul, is it AEW TV match of the year? Total TV match of the year? Top 5? Where do you have it? And how much did you enjoy last night?
For me personally, it's top 3. I think my favorite AEW television match of the whole year and my favorite TV match of the year is the Dynamite 200 with MJF and Will Ospreay for the International Championship, the 1 hour match, which I'll gush over that match, I'm sure, but at a later point. It's truly spectacular. But let's talk about this match, right? Okay, so I've seen people moaning and crying and whining, as wrestling fans tend to do. This is why I don't have Twitter, about, oh, this match, you know, he did a Styles Clash to the floor. That's a devastating move. That's a killer move. It shouldn't be used as a transitional spot or whatever. Here's the facts, and I'm nuts. It's a move. You can't copyright a move, you know. Yeah, you can pay homage and legacy to it. That's why it's called the Styles Clash, because AJ Styles done it, like the Lou Fez press, or you know, the claw of Jeans or the Snitsky's, or the Iron Claw, obviously, with the Texas Iron Claw guys.
No doubt.
On Eric's.
Baron Eric's, that's it. Go. Thanks, even David.
Everybody does a German suplex.
Yeah, like to say a move is sacred and or sacrilege if you're just burning it, it's just utter nonsense. It's a move. It can't be copyrighted. It can't be trademarked. It can't be like, if this wrestler does it, he has to pay royalties on it. It's movement. You know, I go to indie shows in Scotland, and I've seen a match where somebody did a tombstone pile driver through 2 planes of glass, and the ending finish to that match was a knockout punch. Like, yeah, okay, cool. That's what the promoter wants. That's what the talent want to do in that match. Well, let them do it. And the people like saying like, oh, you know, there's parts of this that were unsafe and they shouldn't have done that. They should have done it this way. I was like, you're not trained in this. You've not done an ounce of training in your life. The only training you've done is to pick up the TV remote, swipe on your pad, or when you're having a little fun time when you're going over some of the lady talent, because you're weirdos like that, right? Look, I am never going to go up to a talent and say, hey, you did that. You know, you did that DDT wrong. You should have twisted them to the left, because they'll end up just knocking my block off, and then I'm going to pay the repercussions of my words. I've seen people on all sides, AEW fans on Cage Match, giving this 9s and 10s. I think it's the most glorious match of the year. It was very good. I loved the match. The crowd loved the match. It was a very enjoyable match. I've seen people on the other side of the argument from Twitter and Reddit all saying that, they should have protected this. This move is sacred like this. You can't do it like this. You need to do it like this and this way and this way. Even so, with the style clash, Darby Allin sold it until 10. He was lifeless until 9. No movement, nothing. That legitimately could have been the ending of the match. But Darby got that ounce of a little drug that people should really remember called adrenaline and went into the ring, Oz cutter, adrenaline kicks in, kicks out, does his finisher, gets the pin. Now, yes, people are going to be like, well, it's the coffin drop. It's just your back landing on somebody. How is that as devastating as a Styles clash or an Oz cutter? I was like, but like,
there's not a move that terrifies me more in professional wrestling than the coffin drop. From a safety standpoint, as a person that's had spine stuff and back stuff, it terrifies me. And not only that, human landing on you that way, the force of a cannonball looks a lot different than a dive. So remember that when you're trying to, right? Yeah. Next time you jump in a pool, belly flop, see what happens to the water, then do it that way. Do a coffin drop and see what happens to the water.
But like my point is like, sorry to burst the bubble here, but like this is all scripted, right?
We know.
Yes, of course the moves do hurt an element. I've been into a wrestling ring and feel how stiff and tough that thing is. Landing on that in any capacity can hurt. You can break your leg doing a simple twist or a dive. You can do all these injuries from simple training for an hour a day or something like that. The risk of wrestling is always there. I just don't like wrestling fans are morons at the end of the day. I think they're some of the worst community out there, and
I love them, but they're definitely.
I hate them. That's why I can't stand them anymore.
So you're preaching to the choir a little bit on that, because I put out a very facetious Cody Rhodes reel.
Yeah, but here's the thing,
I know people genuinely believe
people are idiots
that I lost my mind over I couldn't believe that Seth didn't know Cody was going to wrestle him.
All right, going back to this,
go ahead, finish up. Sorry,
match was great. I thought Ospreay and Darby brought it. They had an enjoyable match. The crowd loved it, which is the most important thing. They were chanting "Holy shit" before the match had even kicked off. And that harkens back to when obviously Omega and Danielson met at the ring at Grand Slam in 2021. Like the fans enjoyed it, right? Fans enjoyed it. People went home happy.
Match.
Our own Shad loved the match. At the end of the day, it got its job done. 100%. Adding to the Continental Classic, adding to the story of Darby Allin and Will Ospreay, and the fans loved it. Is it a 5-star classic? Maybe not. But saying that it destroyed the sanctimony of wrestling or ever what garb, no.
I'm actually curious what the star rating was on WR. And David, you might know that, but I have to toss this to you, because nobody goes like match for match that I know as the way that you do. And so this is a big ask here. Like, was it match of the year on TV? You've watched quite a bit of TV wrestling, as I know. You've reviewed quite a bit of TV wrestling. Did you have it in that category? Did you have that feel? What were your thoughts on it? And then not only that, if you've got an example that's better, because Soul gave a really good one on the hour-long match. That is a great call. If you got an example that's better, I would also love to hear that as well before we send everybody home.
Okay, so this is something that I wanted to talk about all show. I think this is a really fascinating topic. So I review a lot of wrestling, not just for the website, but generally I watch as much wrestling from around the world as I can consume, from Japan, Mexico, the UK, Europe, America, Canada, everywhere that I can get my hands on it. And I've seen so many different styles of wrestling. I've seen Will Ospreay do this type of match so many times, and I think this is really interesting, because Will Ospreay is going to be my wrestler of the year. We will be doing WR Awards soon, and I will be submitting my nominations with Will Ospreay pointedly at number 1. This is the 20th match this year that I've given him a 9 or 10 out of 10 for a wrestling match, and I've not seen them all. So, this is he is on one of the best runs of any wrestler ever, consistency-wise from an in-ring standpoint. I really enjoyed this match. Wrestling Republic gave it 4.5 stars, I believe. Our good friend Archie. I would concur with that rating, and I would stand by that rating, and I endorse that rating of 4.5 stars, which is the same rating that I gave it personally. I think it is a very, very, very good match. It is not in my top TV matches of the year. I've seen quite a few that I enjoyed more, if I'm honest. My favorite TV match of the year being the Young Bucks versus Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. For the tag titles, there is also a great one from February, which is House of Black versus FTR and Daniel Garcia. That was the cage match.
Sir.
I would also throw out the very first Dynamite of the year, Darby Allin, Konosuke Takeshita. And I would also put in there matches like, this is just AEW. I would also concur on the Ospreay MJF thing as well. That's just AEW, not WWE or New Japan or all the rest of them. I think that this match, I think entirely depends on what you want from wrestling. I watched Ben's Allison analysis where he tore apart the ending. I've heard Soul's defense on the ending. I think that both can be true. I think it just comes down to what do you want in your wrestling. If you want realism and you want things to feel like they have that sense of realism, then no, Will Ospreay, dropping Darby with a Styles Clash for him to get in, kick out of an Oscar into 2 coffin drops for the win, that's not realistic, and it's not that level of psychology that you get from sort of other wrestlers. If you want spectacle, it will give you this in droves. Ospreay's done this with Oku, with Josh Alexander, with Yota Tsuji last year. He does these epics where moves don't really matter in terms of the level of brutality. It's just being, the spectacle of wrestling sequence. I fall somewhere in the middle. I really love the match. I see the criticisms, and to be honest, I sort of share some of them. I also don't think Darby, as much as I don't think it was botched, like Ben suggested to the same extent, Darby throwing himself back first onto the apron, again, slightly scares me. But he hit it, and he's fine. So at the moment, we're all fine on that. I think it was a really, really good match. The flip out into the that Code Red sequence, one of the best things I've ever seen.
Slick as all slick.
Incredible match. But I think that I'm not going to dismiss Ben's criticisms or other people's criticisms because I understand them. I think what it boils down to is, did it bother you? It didn't really bother me. But other matches he's done have. It's entirely subjective because that's what wrestling is. It is, unfortunately, a subjective art medium.
This is one of the rarest things I've almost ever seen. All three of us, I think, are in agreement, both twofold. Very good match, very entertaining, definitely not match of the year. On TV, right? Right? They're just other ones. And that doesn't happen often. This is funny, though. We got a couple comments really quick before we head out of here. Rosario said, dang, I'm late. So are we today. That's my fault. And then Rosario said, good quote, Clark. And I think he was talking about my coffin drop into the pool reference. I got to tell a quick story. This is actually really funny because I've been thinking about that one for a while and waiting to bring it up. I was on my birthday in September. We had some friends. We were grilling. We were at the pool. We're all jumping in, messing around, being adult children, consuming some adult sodas. And I was like, hey, let me hit a coffin drop in the pool. And I'm making fun of myself right now because I can't help but laugh. I went for it, and there was a nice little ledge, not like a diving board, but a nice ledge to jump off. So I had some room and went full coffin drop, and I popped up in the water and looked up at my friends, and I was like, I think I just kind of dinged myself. And I'm like, that's in the water. Like my head, the way it, like, I'm like, that's not good. Like that is scary. The water, like it was like a back cannonball. You can't have that. It's scary. Like I wasn't actually concussed, but it might've been like mild whiplash. Like I got in the water and I looked up and was like, whoa, that was, either I'm too old for this stuff or that is that dangerous. Like, it's one of the two. That's all I'm saying. But with that does bring us to the end of the show. Thank you so much, everybody that tuned in, no matter what. If you haven't liked and subscribed already, please do. It helps us out a ton. On behalf of me, Clark Taylor, Soul, David, everybody here at WR, have an excellent weekend. Happy holidays, all of that. We've got more great stuff coming up for you. Of course, tomorrow we'll be back same time, same place. That's noon Pacific, 3 in the East, 8 o'clock in the UK, and of course, 9 a.m. in Hawaii. Have a good one, and we will talk to y'all.